Hello, boys and girls. It is November 19th. It's Thursday. Unfortunately, I am absent yet again, but I wanted to be sure that even though I'm absent, you guys are still able to get the notes for the end of our presentation from yesterday. So that is why I decided to film this short video and be sure that you guys are able to get everything you need. What I want you to do as you're watching this video is this. Please sit quietly with your headphones, watch the entire presentation just like you would in a regular class. I want you to work on your 2-column notes as we move forward, being sure to get down the main ideas and the supporting details that are underlined for you, just like we do every time we take 2-column notes. So what I want you to do is just sit back, pay attention, make sure you watch this entire video, get all the notes, and you'll do just fine. Before watching this video, you should have watched the skits for the scribes, the artisans, and the peasants, the three that we didn't get to yesterday. And the first, of course, that we're going to start with are scribes. Scribes we learned all about in Mesopotamia. They're the official writers and record keepers of ancient Egypt. They kept records of things like trading, like population, all of these different things. Scribes were in charge of writing down. Becoming a scribe was one of the only ways that you were able to rise up the social pyramid. Even if you were born from a poor family to a peasant family, you could go to scribe school and jump up into the scribe category by going to scribe school. However, this wasn't an easy task. Going to scribe school was extremely difficult. You had to spend 12 years learning over 400 different hieroglyphs and how to draw them the proper way. In school, beatings were fairly common. It was a really rough work environment. If you were messing up your hieroglyphs, you would be beaten for it, and that is how they whittled down the best of the best scribes. Scribes, of course, kept records of food supplies, and they also kept a census. What a census is a list of all of the people that live in your particular city-state. And scribes kept this information down in hieroglyphs. They also calculated taxes and the amount of taxes that you owed. And they also, one of their major accomplishments was they invented paper out of papyrus, which is this plant that you see in this picture right here. What they did was they took these long weaves of papyrus and they weaved it together and they used that to make paper. After scribes on our social pyramid, we have artisans. Now, artisans are highly skilled laborers. However, even though they were highly skilled and they were really great at crafting the different things that they would make, they rarely got the respect that they deserved. They are so far down on the social pyramid because there was quite a few of them and they all worked the same job and they didn't necessarily get the respect that they deserved. Artisans took a bunch of different jobs, both stone carvers, painters, sculptors, weavers, etc., etc. And they even had the job of building sarcophaguses like you see in this picture. Over here, we have artisans that are designing this sarcophagus for whatever pharaoh or important person they are burying. And here we have the god Anubis that's overseeing this process. Artisans didn't have as great a life as viziers or scribes did. They lived in small rectangular houses that were only 10 yards long, only the length of a first down for a football team. They didn't have much space at all. They worked side by side in these workshops together where they crafted all of their goods together as a team. Sometimes they worked on royal projects for the pharaoh in which they would design things maybe like the pyramids or the Sphinx or something like that, and they would have all of the different peasants and farmers working for them crafting these royal projects. But even though they were so skilled at this work, they never really received the recognition that they deserved. They were so far down the social pyramid, only above peasants, that nobody even really recognized the amount of talent that they had. However, when we look back into ancient Egypt, we see all of their work in different artifacts. We come across different statues, different pottery, paintings, weavings, all of these different things that artisans worked on, we look at now and consider amazing, when back then they didn't necessarily receive the recognition nor the respect that they deserved for the hard work that they always put in. Now, the only group that artisans is above is, of course, the peasants. Peasants is the lowest and largest class in ancient Egypt. However, even though they were so far down the social pyramid, Egypt depended on them and would not have been able to survive if it wasn't for the peasants. The peasants helped the farmers grow food, and all of Egypt ate this food. Now, what peasants did in ancient Egypt depended on the season. Of course, we talked about the 3 seasons of the Nile River: inundation, emergence, and harvest. During inundation, when all of the land was flooded and there was nothing to do on the farms, peasants would help artisans out and they would work on these royal projects. Peasants would come in vast numbers, and the artisans would point them out, tell them what to do and how they can help build things like pyramids and sphinx, etc., 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 temples, all of these big monuments that we see in ancient Egypt today. That would happen during inundation season because, of course, peasants didn't have a job to do at the farm because everything was flooded during inundation. However, once inundation turns to emergent season, peasants would work in pairs and groups of 2, and they would plow and sow the soil. So one would use an animal to plow the soil, and then somebody would be going right behind them, planting the seed, making sure that they're going to have enough crops for the harvest season. Then, when it comes time for the harvest season, peasants worked from sunup to sundown. They worked from dawn to dusk, harvesting crops for all of ancient Egypt. So the peasants worked a ton of different jobs because there were so many of them, and that job depended on the seasons of the Nile. Of course, peasants didn't live very comfortable lives. They had the fewest comforts of any social class. I was mentioning how artisans lived in such small houses, while peasants lived in even smaller houses, and sometimes these houses were right on the land where they worked for the farmers. They spend most of their lives working during inundation, emergence, and harvest. They always have some sort of job to do, but they did find some time for play. I think in your textbook it references a game where they played in the river and they would tackle each other, basically like what we know today as chicken. They spent, of course, all of their time working, but they were able to celebrate with feasts after harvest season. After harvest season came and they gathered all of those crops, anything that was really left over, sometimes farmers would allow the peasants to have because they didn't make that much money, they didn't have any comforts, and they didn't live very great lives. It's important to know that everybody in ancient Egypt has their role. From the pharaohs to the government officials, all the way down to the peasants, everybody had a part to play in this society. And that is the most important part about this social pyramid. Even though sometimes it seems unfair that one group is ranked higher than another group, everybody has their part to play. And this society could not have functioned as well as it did if it wasn't for everybody from top to bottom on this list. I hope everybody got all of those notes down. I hope everybody enjoyed today's class. If you're done early and you still have time right now, why don't you go play around on your laptop, go to BBC History, play some of those ancient Egyptian games, and just have fun with it. But please be respectful to the substitute. Don't get extremely loud in here, and please be well behaved. Tomorrow, I want you guys to start your workbook for Chapter 8. That is the chapter that's on pharaohs. You will receive further instructions tomorrow, but that is what you're going to be working on. Now, I hope everybody doesn't miss me too much, and I will see you on Monday.